get moving. This shows you the Jewish population in Europe prior to World War II. And one of the things you notice is compared to other countries in Eastern Europe, Germany has a very low number of Jews. There's only a shade over 200,000 Jews living in Germany at the time. That made up like half of 1% of their population. All right. It's not a big deal to them to really, for a lot of people, to hate on the Jews because they look at the situations like they make up next to none of the population. Who cares if they go away? And the Nazis would have been perfectly satisfied if a lot of them had just left the country. But after the invasion of Poland, there's no doing that anymore. Poland has 3.3 million Jews. And so after the invasion of Poland, the Nazis keep talking about this, and imagine them, Hitler and his other superior officers, they're talking about this. They keep referring to the Jewish problem. What do we do about the Jewish problem? What's the solution to the Jewish problem? And that's where we come up, or they came up with the phrase, the final solution. That this is the solution to the Jewish problem, that we exterminate all of them, right? And nothing like this had ever really been planned on such a scale. And for example, you've heard the word genocide, right? Genocide is where you try to wipe out a group of people. That word didn't even really exist before the 20th century, right? And the Nazis planned it out in such an efficient manner that from 1939, the start of World War II, to the end of World War II, they're going to become terribly efficient at it. This shows you each nation, the pre-war Jewish population, how many the Nazis killed, and then the percent from each country that they wiped out. And if you look at the totals there at the bottom, they are going to kill 67%, or 2/3 of the Jews living in Europe in basically a 5-year time frame. Right? So think about it. If you were a Jew in Europe prior to World War II, and somebody says, look, you only got a 1 out of 3 chance of living through the next 5 years, that's a little bit scary. That's frightening to think of. Okay? And people cite this, the Holocaust, what we refer to as the Holocaust or the final solution, as 6 million Jews dying. That's terrible. But that's just part of the death toll. After World War II is over, you're going to get in the neighborhood of 55 to 60 million deaths from combat, from people dying of starvation, not just the Jews being killed in concentration camps, but gypsies, homosexuals, political prisoners, anybody the Nazis felt was undesirable. All right? It's going to be an ugly scene. Okay? Now, we had said that the Nazis invade Poland and they use the Blitzkrieg and they are able to overwhelm Poland pretty quickly. And Great Britain and France finally did something. After September 1939, after the invasion into Poland, Great Britain and France finally decided to react. They declare war on Germany. But here's the problem with that. Okay? The problem is this. It's going to take them a while to mobilize and get ready for war. Okay? Normally we think, oh, they declared war, they're going to attack tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. Great Britain and France have to mobilize, they have to get their soldiers ready, they have to get them armed. In a lot of ways, you have new recruits who need to be trained on how to operate. They got to go through a form of basic training, right? While they're doing this, from 1939, the fall of 1939, into the spring and summer of 1940, there's not a lot. Great Britain and France aren't doing a lot of fighting. They're preparing for war, okay? And that time period they refer to as the phony war or Sitzkrieg instead of Blitzkrieg. Historians are so clever, all right? Great Britain and France are just chilling. Not chilling entirely. They're just getting ready for war, right? They're not able to fight yet. They don't have their clothes on. You ever have that one person who always makes you late for something? That's Great Britain and France. They're late to the party, right? Now, while this is going on, the United States has got to figure out its role in all of this. And America is going to try really hard to stay out of it. Because what happened the last time we got involved in a European conflict? What we know always happens in war. People die. There's casualties. And we're like, hey, Europe, don't drag us into your drama. All right? We're going to stay neutral. In fact, you go back to 1936, 3 years before the war starts, and the United States Congress and President Roosevelt approved, they passed a law called the Neutrality Acts. And it's basically saying that America will try to stay neutral in the event of a war in Europe. We stay neutral. We don't want any part of your mess. You ever had that friend that tries to drag you into their drama? And you're like, no, leave me out of it. I don't want any part of it. Right? America is trying to stay out of it. They drag us in anyway, though. There's always that one friend. Maybe you're that one friend that drags people into conflict. Oof. You are the Great Britain or France. Okay? Now, even though America says we're going to be neutral, Franklin Roosevelt starts planning ahead. He starts devoting more resources to the military because he sees that Europe is going to somehow drag us into war. He hopes it doesn't happen, but he's like, I'm a realist. All right? So Franklin Roosevelt starts devoting more resources towards war. It starts building up the military. Ooh, this is going to be madness, I tell you. All right? So we're trying to stay neutral, okay? But the war is going to get crazy in Europe, yo. All right? Take a look at this little map here, okay? So you got Europe here, and remember, Great Britain and France, they're busy organizing their militaries, all right? They got that time gap from the fall of 1939 into 1940. But Germany's not just going to wait around for them, okay? Germany is conquering these other countries in Europe, like Denmark, the Netherlands. They conquer Hungary, most of this region, Yugoslavia and Romania to an extent. They start moving into all kinds of other areas, even up in Norway, and they're conquering other countries so that they can access more resources. They're like, hey, if you want to perpetuate this war, then we need more resources. And so once they acquire more resources, then they're going to turn their attention to Great Britain and France. Ooh. Now, Great Britain and France, remember, France, they've got plans. Okay? They're like, we know how to stop the Nazis. During the 1920s, remember, they were always afraid after World War I that the Germans were going to invade again. So remember, they prepared for it. They built something called the Maginot Line. Right here along the border, the Maginot Line was a series of forts and bunkers and artillery pieces that would be ready in case an invasion would come. Here's a little bit closer in map of that. The Maginot Line. Imagine the possibilities. No, too much for the pun? I liked it. No. All right, so the Maginot Line. Now, here's the deal, okay? And this graphic doesn't show it, but even in case Germany invaded through Belgium like they did in World War I, there were some forts here too. And the only place that wasn't guarded, that wasn't heavily fortified, was this little region in here. And France said, we don't need to build forts there. It's really thick forest, lots of trees, bad terrain. There's no way the Germans could drive tanks and troops through there. No way. Right? When you say there's no way something's going to happen, what do you think's going to happen? Exactly that. All right? Now, France is like, there's no way that they're going to be able to come through here. And Great Britain had sent troops across the English Channel to help. Right? So France has amassed this huge army. The British and the French got this army, and they know the Germans are coming. It's just a matter of where. Oof. Okay? Where do you think the Germans are coming? Right where they said they couldn't. Okay? They don't attack through Belgium. They don't go directly through the Maginot Line. The Germans, when they attack, they go right in between here into that thick wooded foresty area, and they do what France thought they couldn't. They drive a bunch of tanks and bring a lot of infantry troops through a forested area, and they're going to completely blindside the poor French and British army. They go right through here, and they attack the Maginot Line from behind. You think they're coming this way, and they attack them from behind. It's a rout. It's not even close. The French aren't ready. The British aren't ready. They get blitz. The Blitzkrieg just absolutely crushes them. The French get a bad reputation as like they're not tough and they can't fight. It's not true. They just weren't prepared. They weren't adequately prepared. Although, maybe they got soft in their old age. Now, here's what's really ugly, okay? The British and French army is going to get chased all the way up through France, right? They're going to get chased all the way up through France. And the Nazis, the German army, has them surrounded up here. And the British and French army's like, what are we going to do? And they're like, I know. Let's call some boats over and cross the English Channel. Right? Literally, the British and French army, they escape and they go across the English Channel in a bunch of small boats. Great Britain had sent over a bunch of small, commercial boats to ferry people from the battlefield back over into Great Britain, back to safety. Oh, gosh. Now, it's a pretty bizarre thing. And the town they were at where they got to cross over is a place called Dunkirk. And there was a movie in 2017 that came out, a Christopher Nolan movie, that's fantastic. It'll scare the bejeebers out of you. Losh, did we get a chance to watch that last year? Dagnabbit. We watched Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, that was a good one. We mix up our World War II movies. I know, we can't help but like him. All right, Dunkirk. The British and French army is able to ferry themselves across the English Channel, and so they're preserved. They're saved. Okay? Because literally, if they had gotten captured or killed, the war's probably over right there. Right? But their army survives. Right? You can always build new tanks and new airplanes and get more bullets, but it's a lot to build new people. It takes time. You can't speed that up. Okay? So, look, you've got this miracle at Dunkirk there, and the French government gives up like the next week. The capital city of Paris surrenders. It takes Germany all of 3 weeks to conquer France. They did in 3 weeks what the German army couldn't do in 5 years in World War I. They conquer France. Sacre bleu! That's what those French would say. Okay? So it's getting really ugly here. France surrenders. We give up. White flag. Now here's what Germany does for France. They're like, oh, hey, here's what we'll do. Let me go ahead and go to the map first. We'll go back to those guys. Germany says, hey, northern France now belongs to Germany. Okay? There is no more northern France. But we'll let France stay a country. See the southern portion of France right here? We'll let you guys remain an independent country, and you just got to move your capital city out of Paris. And so they moved the capital from Paris to a place called Vichy. All right? And they said, oh, by the way, when you move your new capital, you need to pick a new government, and they need to be friendly to the Nazis. They were like collaborators. So they moved their capital here to Vichy, France, and they cooperate with the Nazis. They're like, you got to turn over any Jews that you have, and you have to help us. How do you think the French took that? A lot of French citizens were angry, and they didn't want to do it. All right? They were pretty annoyed with it. However, there were some French citizens who organized a resistance. Okay? Loyal French soldiers and French people formed something called the French Resistance. And it looks like the regular French flag, but what do you see there in the middle? What is that? That's not a trick question. It's a cross, but not just any cross. It's a double cross, right? Anybody know who used that symbol, like the double cross? Think back to medieval times and a little bit earlier. What is it? The Knights Templar. They use that symbol. All right, this French resistance, they see themselves as a form of the Knights Templar doing the Lord's work. And the French resistance, they're like a guerrilla group. When we say guerrilla, I'm not talking about like a giant species of ape. I'm talking about a guerrilla fighter, somebody who uses hit and run tactics. They don't have uniforms. And like, for example, we're loyal members of the French resistance, and we have a meeting, okay? And I say, here's what we're going to do tonight. I hand Hightower over there a pistol, and I'm like, hey, you got 5 bullets. And she's like, what do you want me to do with them? Go find a Nazi official and shoot them, all right? Or anybody helping the Nazis, shoot them. And Literal's like, what do you got for me? And I'm like, I got a bomb. Go find a German vehicle and blow it up, right? We don't wear uniforms. We work at night. We provide information to the British and later on to the Americans. And we're the loyal French. Ooh. Right. Poor France is now gone. Okay? The French resistance, led by this guy, very stuffy looking fellow named Charles de Gaulle. right? Later on, he's going to be president of France. That's adorable. Not till much later on, though. All right. Now, things are looking really grim in 1940, okay? Germany has either conquered most of Europe or they have allies, friends like Italy, who are helping them, right? It looks really bad. The only two enemies they have left are Great Britain and the Soviet Union, right? So in 1940, people like would be completely understandable if you thought that the Nazis were going to conquer all of Europe. It's really looking bad for the good guys. Oof. Right? That's a good place for us to stop right there.